Now, let's look at specifically the threat of what happened to all these arms depots that Gaddafi had, massive arms depots. There was a lot of press reporting about this, including lots of shoulder-fired missiles. We also know that right around this time, there was not a lot of border security in places like Egypt, and there's certainly pipelines that run from Libya across into other theaters of jihad. How big a threat do you see that?
Gigantic problem. Initially, there were 20,000 man-pads, man-portable air defense systems, surface-to-air missiles, 7s and 22s that were lost. 5,000 were recovered, so we're still looking for 15,000 of these missiles. SAM-7s are effective against aircraft on takeoff and landing. They're heat seekers. The other ones, are SAM-22s, are good against aircraft flying up to about 11,000 feet. Those SAM-22s, most of them came off of systems that were mounted on vehicles, but if you can put grip stocks on those things, you can just pop them out of the trunk of a car and fire. This is a major problem for the world. What we need to be thinking about is what the Israelis have. They have a thing called radar warning receivers on all their commercial aircraft. We need to think about putting radar warning receivers on our commercial aircraft that fly over that part of the world. And what happens is when one of those systems goes off, they sense that they're being locked in on, they then would put out both chaff and flares. The chaff will stop something that's coming in on by a radar, and the flares would stop anything on IR, infrared, which would be heat seekers. We should not wait for one of our planes or a plane, an airliner, commercial airliner, to be shot down before we do this. With that many man-pads on the loose, we need to be thinking ahead. We need to adjust, something this administration has not done. They didn't do that during this crisis. It's disgraceful the way they've conducted themselves.
Gary, it's interesting you're focusing in on commercial airliners or airliners in that region of the world. So I'm going to make a series of statements, all of which might be very capable of being wrong. So correct them at the end of my statement when I get to my question. After 9/11, we were under the impression that that kind of attack took such a level of coordination and complexity that we immediately focused on one group and perhaps just one man, Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. Now, what we're talking about here today at this table is al-Qaeda in a new form, right? In a new evolution, where it's al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, whether or not it's in the Arabian Peninsula or in Iraq. It's these franchises we're talking about. How much capability do these franchises have of bringing an attack to our domestic shores? Does this new iteration of al-Qaeda, is it capable of what we understood about al-Qaeda in the Osama bin Laden days?
First off, they're more capable abroad as smaller franchises, and it doesn't take a whole lot of coordination. It really doesn't.
For what they're doing now, you're saying?
What they're doing now, or even look, people can get on the internet. They can look at almost anything on the internet. They can go to Google Earth. They can do, and they're doing that. They're doing those types of things. And can they enter the United States and cause terrible problems? Yes. They can enter almost naked, for them go to work at McDonald's and self-fund themselves over a couple of years and then do horrible damage to us. We have to be aggressive against these guys outside of the United States and penetrate their operations abroad before they get here.
So, Gary, we've heard a lot about the administration working in Libya with drone strikes to target al-Qaeda representatives there, and we're finding out that we're doing so with the help or the permission of the president in Yemen. Do you think that now that we're trying to form this new allegiance with Libya and we're helping them rebuild, that we've been conducting similar things in Libya and we just don't know about it yet?
We always, the U.S. government, where we can work with allied governments on the counterterrorism field, we do. And we cooperate with certain governments that you might think are hostile to the United States. We work side by side with them because we have common goals on making sure that civil aviation isn't attacked, cruise liners aren't attacked, those sorts of things. We do that together all the time. So as a chief of station, I was a chief of station 3 times during my career. You're both doing unilateral things on your own, and you're doing bilateral things with the host nation that you're there, and sometimes with other nations that are close allies of ours on third territory.
Do you think drone strikes are possible in Libya now that especially we know that this Ansar al Sharia?
I think drone strikes are possible in Libya, of course, very easily.
So, Gary, I have this question. Are these franchises proliferating? And if so, why? Is it because of the Arab Spring? Is it because of U.S. policy? What's going on in this part of the world?
Combination of factors, but more than anything else is you have a power vacuum across North Africa.
Chaos.
You know, and we've had a loss of control. You know, it's like you look at northern Mali. You look at Boko Haram in Nigeria. You look at places where a level of violence has increased. You know, the idea that the administration, this current administration, was providing leadership in our dealings with the Islamic world. This wasn't the Arab Spring. This was the Islamic Spring, which occurred. And these
so
groups.
Is America in more danger now than we were September 10th, 2001?
Yes.
Wow.
Can I expand on that?
Why?
Because the number of groups we're facing has proliferated, and the difficulty of penetrating them all is greater. You know, during Al-Qaeda, during the time of Al-Qaeda, okay, we were looking at things. I was the chief of Hezbollah operations in those days. So I was working against Hezbollah. We had Hezbollah. We knew we had Al-Qaeda as a problem. We were working against it. But now you might have 15 different groups. And it's hard to get on the ground to penetrate all these groups.
Sorry, Matt, let me just follow up with one question. So earlier I said when 9/11 happened, we focused very quickly on Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. If something like that happened today, am I correct in understanding you now, you wouldn't know which among 10 of these groups was responsible?
It would be difficult unless we've had success, unless the agency is having success penetrating those specific groups with, you know, human sources, or if they've done the good technical things. We talk about NSA being able to do SIGINT work against them. But this is getting more difficult. It's getting more difficult, and the playing field is much larger.
So if it's